Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is another reaction to the richest, actually, this time. I say another reaction. I've not reacted to this channel for a long time, but I done a reaction yesterday and it's kind of similar to this, but I didn't really feel satisfied by the video, you know? It wasn't really what I was expecting, so hopefully this is a better representation of what I'm trying to look for. But yeah, we're just going to check this out. Hopefully going to enjoy, and links are in the description to my Patreon for extra reactions that you want to see that obviously can't be posted to YouTube for whatever reason. But let's just jump into this.
We live in a world obsessed with rich celebrities. But do you know what's even more jaw-dropping than a
Mr. T, what's
super
happened
rich
to him?
star? A well-known rich person who loses it all and ends up homeless.
Do you get the Mr. T Snickers adverts in the US? That's not just a UK thing, is it? I'm sure you get them in the US too. Bro, I used to love those adverts.
From professional athletes to child stars, these rich and famous individuals all suffered terrible downfalls. Speaking of being careful, let's make sure you're extra covered by not only hitting that subscribe button, but activating those notifications too. If you're old enough to have watched Danny BONADUCE.
Who the hell is that?
If you're old enough to have watched television in the 1970s, or you just like to binge watch old shows, then there's a pretty good chance you've seen actor Danny BONADUCE in action. As a child actor, BONADUCE made his name on the popular Partridge Family series, where viewers easily recognized him thanks to his freckles. Now in his 50s, he's not homeless anymore, but for a while there, things looked pretty bleak. You see, after the Partridge Family ended, the number of jobs available to BONADUCE dried up. Then he got involved with drugs. Unemployment and drugs ate up all of his money, and the former child star actually spent a period living in a car behind Grumman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. There, he lived for a period of the late 70s and early 80s. Strangely, because he was still famous, BONADUCE would meet with fans in front of the theater by day, and then when no one was watching, he'd slip back behind the theater to his car where he spent the rest of his time. Fortunately, over the last 20 years,
he was still getting recognized and stuff, and like people were noticing him as if he's still this big star, and he's just going back to his car. Bro, that's a crazy life to live.
He's been able to turn his life around and is no longer homeless.
Good on him, man.
Brett Butler.
Brett Butler.
If you watched a lot of TV in the 90s, then you likely know who Brett Butler is. She starred as Grace in ABC's hit series Grace Under Fire. In the show, Butler's character was strong and independent. In real life, things weren't so solid. You see, despite being the star of a network show and having a very good paycheck, Butler started down a slippery slope thanks to drugs. It was actually while she was shooting Grace Under Fire that her addiction started to affect her work, and it all ended up playing a role in the termination of the show. Having moved out of LA, Butler fell off the face of the earth for several years, and nobody knew where she was. Apparently, she had moved to a farm in Georgia, yet it was later learned that she ran out of money and was actually living in a homeless shelter. That's right, the one-time star.
Bro, that blows my mind how you can get so much money and then that's when it goes wrong. Like, I guess before this she was probably an actor, but she wasn't getting this crazy money, but then I guess she was living alright, and then she gets this money and then it all just goes tits up, and then that's when it goes wrong. Like, it's just crazy.
Star of a hit show had lost it all and was living in a shelter. Since 2012, Butler has been back on the grid and building up appearances in a variety of shows and movies.
Go on. You'd love to see
Randy Quaid.
I don't know any of these people.
From Independence Day to Christmas Vacation, Randy Quaid has one of those faces that's so recognizable. He was never an A-list celeb, but he definitely made good money after appearing in many Hollywood hits. Nonetheless, over the last several years, news about Quaid has not been good at all. There haven't been any new movie roles, and all indications are that the Hollywood money's all gone. He's been arrested for failing to pay bills, and even had a run-in with the law for squatting in a house that he didn't own. To take problems to a whole other level, you could say that Quaid didn't just go through a homeless phase, but he also went through a period where he had no country. Convinced someone in the United States was out to get him, he and his wife left for Canada, where they tried to claim refugee status. Canada said no, and he ended up bouncing back and forth across the border for a while. Today, he's getting back to nature in Vermont, and he looks the part. Heck, even Cousin Eddie had at least a motorhome. Sugar Ray Williams.
Wild story.
Professional sports can be a great way to make it big and get rich fast. After all, how many young sports stars do we see today going from rags to riches? Unfortunately, as the story of Ray Williams shows us, it can all go south in the blink of an eye. Williams achieved the dream of so many aspiring
from back a long, long time
basketball
ago.
players when he was drafted by the New York Knicks in 1977. Over the next decade, he enjoyed a solid career, retiring in 1987. Despite living the life of a pro athlete for so many years, retirement brought problems and Williams struggled with his finances. By 1994, the bank was empty, and this former NBAer filed for bankruptcy.
That's so
It cost him
crazy
his
to me.
family and his home. Even his NBA.
But at the end of the day, I guess the money back in the NBA those days just wasn't life-changing money where you could retire, or you could be guaranteed to retire. Maybe it was. Maybe that, if they were smart, like I guess maybe even back then, the NBA money was still so good that they could just invest it and it would just be enough if they were smart of it to not have to work again. But I don't really know much about the pay for the NBA or the other American sports leagues back then.
Pension couldn't help after it was lost in a scam. By 2010, he was living in his car and surviving off donations and any work he could pick up. He did manage to turn things around a bit when he got a job and got married. Unfortunately, life can be cruel sometimes, and he passed away in 2013.
Oh, rest in peace, man.
Robert Driscoll. Is it just us, or are the lives of child stars filled with scandal, health issues, and a whack of other problems? After all, we've already mentioned Danny BONADUCE, but you can also include non-homeless actors like Lindsay Lohan and Haley Joel Osment. Nonetheless, since this is all about rich people turned homeless, we'll stick with that theme by introducing you to Robert Driscoll. More famously known as Bobby, Driscoll was a big-time child star of the 1940s and 50s.
So
if you
long,
look at
long
Driscoll's
time
career,
ago.
everything seemed set up for financial success. He was a Disney star and so big that Peter Pan was modeled on his looks.
What?
In fact, for a couple decades, he was steadily employed making appearances on radio and television. In the early 60s, it all went downhill. America's golden boy started running into trouble with both the law and drug use. Released from prison in 1965, he moved to New York looking for work. Nothing materialized, and Driscoll spent the last several months of his life homeless and living on the street. When kids found his body in 1968, he had been living in an abandoned apartment building.
How
All
does
right,
this
everyone.
even happen,
It's time for
man?
our richest
It shows how dark the. It just shows how dark the sort of I don't want to say Hollywood, but the whole sort of acting scene can really be, man.
quiz. Do you know approximately how many people filed for bankruptcy in the United States last year? Check those credit scores and bank accounts while we show you 5
million.
more people who went from having it all to being down in the dumps. BARKLEY.
Don't know him either.
As you've already seen with the story of Sugar Ray Williams,
The
money can
basketballer.
come fast in professional sports. That said, it can also disappear just as fast and leave the star athlete in a bad situation. BARKLEY found this out firsthand. Nicknamed the Blade, he was a one-time terror in the boxing ring. Active throughout the
Oh, he's a
80s and 90s,
boxer.
this former boxer held championship titles in 3 different weight classes. Throughout this successful career, Barkley earned millions in winnings. After retiring from the sport, those millions of dollars in the bank account started to vanish quickly. As it turns out, cars, jewelry, and fur coats cost quite a bit of cash. In no time, the money was gone, and this champion boxer was out on the street. In the early days, Barkley spent most of his time sleeping on the subway because there was nowhere to go.
God
A boxing
damn.
comeback attempt in the early 2000s didn't pan out, and when reporters wanted to meet with him, they found him in a cheap motel in the Bronx. Since then, information is sparse, but all indications are that he is no longer homeless thanks to the help of family and
Man,
friends.
you gotta be smart of your money. He earned millions and he just. God damn, it's sad to see, but geez, like if you get millions, you gotta be smarter. It's easier said than done, but like. That's wild how you can be like a millionaire and now you're just living from. You're just moving from sofa to sofa, like you're relying on your family. Like, just this kind of stuff, that's just crazy to me, man.
NATASHA LYONNE.
It
Whether
happens,
you're
though.
into teen movies from the 90s and early 2000s or major Netflix hits, odds are that you've seen more than a little of NATASHA LYONNE on the big and small screens. Her fame all really started in the late 90s when she starred as the best friend of Tara Reid in the hit American Pie. Fast forward several years and she struck gold again, playing a female inmate in the hit series Orange is the New Black.
Oh, so she's.
In fact, if you
Actually, I do recognise her. I've never watched American Pie, but I feel like I've seen bits of it, and I've also seen bits of Orange is the New Black, and they're both huge series, so she's definitely the most well-known as of yet. Where did it go wrong here? Because this is a lot more recent as well, so the money must have been even better.
You look at this 38-year-old's resume, she's been working away and making lots of money for some time
God
now.
damn.
Yet, there was a little blip in the early 2000s. You see, around 2004, things
so
went
before.
south for a while. Despite on-screen success,
just a new
LYONNE started running into personal problems and the law. She had charges brought up against her, was evicted from her apartment, and hit rock bottom when she showed up at a New York hospital in really bad shape. She admitted herself with a fake name, suffering from hepatitis C, a heart infection, and a collapsed lung.
God damn.
Reportedly, she also had many track marks on her arms from drug use. Having been living on the street, things definitely were at rock bottom. Fortunately, she was able to turn things around, got a place to live, and found steady work back in entertainment. Willie
That's good to see.
Ames.
At least she made a comeback. A really good one as well.
At one time, Willie Ames was a very successful television actor. Throughout the 70s and 80s, the one-time heartthrob starred in such shows as The Swiss Family Robinson, 8 is Enough, and Charles in Charge. With the end of the 80s, the acting gigs started to dry up. No problem, right? After all, having had so much high-profile work before surely left him with a ton of dough in the bank. A celebrity lifestyle and massive hospital bills from treating a disease his wife suffered from quickly ate up all the money.
Oh,
Ames
man.
turned to selling some of his property, but that wasn't enough. Eventually, the bank came and took everything, and his wife...
But that ain't on him then. I feel bad for him and his wife then, because they've sort of been forced into that. Maybe still he was not good with his money, but even then, like, he's caring for his wife. That's just sad, man. Praise the NHS, that's all I'll say.
left him. Penniless and without a home, this one-time TV star was left sleeping under bushes or inside parking
Flippin'
garages when he
hell.
couldn't find anyone willing to take him in. Over the last several years, it appears he has been able to turn his life around and get off the drugs.
Go on,
Sure,
lad.
he's a long way from the success of the 80s, but we're thinking anything is better than having to sleep in a parking garage. Rocky LOCKRIDGE. Ask any boxing fan who Rocky LOCKRIDGE is, and they'll tell you simply that he was a champ. He made his name in the ring in the 1980s and fought in some rather high-profile fights. Perhaps his most famous moment came when he knocked out Roger Mayweather in the first round of their 1984 title fight. However, unlike other sports stars who got into drugs and alcohol after they retired, LOCKRIDGE admits he was abusing while he was boxing professionally. This meant
Still
when
knocking
he
people
left
out.
the ring for good in 1992, the 44-9 boxer was already facing an uphill battle. In the late 90s, he was arrested several times. After getting out, he had no money and no home and spent several years living on the streets in Camden, New Jersey. Incredibly, a chance encounter with a bully put LOCKRIDGE's name back into the headlines. Confronted by a bully, LOCKRIDGE threw a 1-2 combination and knocked the guy out. The whole thing was recorded by a passerby and put up online where it went viral. Around the same time, an intervention by family seems to have turned things around and
What? This is not him. No. What? Are you joking? Wait.
LOCKRIDGE is, at least, no longer homeless.
No way. That's gonna spin my mind, bro. That's not him, is it? That is! God damn it! That's him! Flipping hell, man.
Margot Kidder. Long before the DC reboot that gave us the new versions of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, there were the original films dating back over a few decades. One of the more popular franchises was Superman, starring the late, great Christopher Reeve. Of course, no Superman is complete without his love interest, Lois Lane. In this case, Lois was played by actress Margot Kidder. The Canadian actress was very busy during the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but it was really her role as Lois Lane that made her famous. Nonetheless, for a brief period in 1996, everything fell completely apart for Kidder. Known to suffer from bipolar disorder, Kidder suffered a massive breakdown and vanished for several days in the Los Angeles area.
Jeez.
Now, technically, she wasn't homeless, but the way people found her, it was clear Kidder was in need of immediate help. It turns out that for several days, the actress had been living on the street using bushes and cardboard boxes for shelter. When she was finally discovered in an LA suburb, Kidder had no money, was missing some teeth, and apparently looked unrecognizable to those who first found her.
Missing some
Thankfully,
teeth.
she was able to get treatment, turn things around, and remain active in TV and movies.
That's good
So,
to see then.
do you know how many people filed
Oh.
for bankruptcy in the United
I said a
States
million.
last year? The answer? nearly 800,000.
Quite close. That's wild, man. That is wild. What happens when you file for bankruptcy? Do all your like, assets just get taken from you or something? I guess if you're bankrupt, you have no assets left, right? My parents left me on the street since 11 with nothing, and now I had a transport company and some lands, a big house with a beautiful wife and 2 adorable kids. I'm so proud of myself. Winner or loser, it's your choice. Work hard and no drugs. Good to hear, man. That's a weird ass name though, so I doubt that. What is that name? I suppose we all only a couple of bad choices away from similar situations. Yeah, I guess so, but goddamn, when you've earned millions and then it just goes tits up, it's wild to sort of see how it can happen. But it does, and that's just how it is in that business, I guess. Like yeah, when you're an athlete and you've been doing it for a long time and then you suddenly just have to stop, it must be quite scary and like quite, well, obviously sad for you, like, and it's a scary sort of situation to face because something you've done every day is now just sort of gone. And I don't know, man, it maybe just sort of makes you like just, it makes you want to do other things, and maybe that's what it leads to, like the drugs and stuff. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. Till next time, like, subscribe, peace.